That was all you could see by then.
Yeah.
So walk through this.
Good evening, everyone. The time is 6:53, and I'm now going to call this public hearing of the Board of Selectmen to order. I'm going to start by reading the legal notice for the public hearing. Legal notice of public hearing, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut. Pursuant to Section 503I of the Portland Town Charter, a public hearing will be held by the Board of Selectmen on Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024, at 6:50 p.m. in the Buck Foreman Community Room, 265 Main Street, Portland, Connecticut, to provide residents the opportunity to comment both orally and in writing on the proposed 2024 Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act, NAA program, available to interested nonprofit organizations in Portland, dated this 21st day of March, 2024. Attest Ryan J. Curley, First Selectman. So this is an annual public hearing that we are required to hold so that we are eligible to participate, or nonprofits are eligible to participate in this program should they choose. So with that, we'll open it up to any public comment on this 2024 Neighborhood Assistance Act program. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment?
Hearing none.
Not into anybody in the chat? Give it just a second. All right. Seeing no comment, we will close the public hearing at 6:54 p.m. Our regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting will begin at 7 p.m. So we'll pick back up in a few minutes. Thank you all.
I'm gonna explain something. I don't have all my fingers, okay? If I had my thumb, it would have stopped where it was supposed to. I didn't, it fell right past it.
I don't know if this set precedence for what I agreed to late with
Hey,
We having fun now.
good evening, everyone. The time is 7 p.m., and I will now call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, the next item is tonight's agenda. I do have a couple changes here this evening. Under approval of minutes, there are no minutes from March 27th, 2024, so I'm going to cross that out, as we did not have that meeting, if you remember. Under communications and correspondence, we're going to have a presentation of our auditors this evening, and after that, I'd like to discuss the flooding situation at Job's Pond. So I'd like to add that under communications and correspondence. And then I have a new item 13 this evening. That will be after the pickleball line painting, which is number 12. So this number 13 would be the 2024 Neighborhood Assistance Act, or NAA Program Partnership. And that's a resolution. You may recall we just had a public hearing on that. So, and then appointments to boards and commissions will become the new 14, and then so on down from there. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you both. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, the next item tonight is from our budget workshop. So you may recall the Board of Selectmen met last week in deliberation, and we did finalize the fiscal year 2025 proposed budget. And in your packets, there is a resolution. If someone would like to move the resolution, we can.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay, would you like to read it, though, just for the record?
Resolution, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut, dated April 3rd, 2024. Adoption of the proposed 2024-2025 fiscal year budget. Resolved that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Portland hereby adopts the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget in the amount of $40,050,813, detailed as follows. Town General Government, $15,307,292. Board of Education, $24,743,521.
Thank you. And, did you second that?
I did.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, discussion, right?
Sure.
I'm gonna just read a little statement that I wrote. So I'm just disappointed that we never even deliberated on the increase of the Board of Education budget. It kind of just like passed right through, and we never really talked about it, so that bothered me a little bit. But there are many problems with this increase, and it starts at the top. This year, and in past years, there has been a decrease in the funding of the maintenance budget and no capital repairs. These poor decisions have put our schools in disrepair, and it almost seems intentional in order to get a mega school built. Next, the financial situation has been managed so poorly that every year there is a spending freeze and a deficit. They have been aware of what they call a financial cliff or sunsetting funds for a couple of years and still couldn't manage to correct it or at least have a safety net in place. And last, the leadership on the Board of Education has made one bad decision after another, allowing it to get to where we are today, paperless and poor. I guess they are too happy patting themselves on the back to see the walls crumbling around them. So in good conscience, I don't see myself rewarding them for their bad behavior and throw money at a problem without ever finding a solution for that problem. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I just have one thing. Last Tuesday, we had discussion on the tennis courts, that they were in disrepair, and it was bounced around of what the cost would be to replace them or to repair them. And at that point, Selectman Hernandez said, with what we need to do for maintenance in the schools, that we shouldn't be really talking about $500,000 to $1 million to replace those. And then on Friday, I found out that they found $19,000, or don't really know how they found it when they have a deficit of what I could come up with from watching the meeting the other night of roughly $270,000. And the thing that really upsets me about all this is that they realized right before practice was starting for the new season that these courts couldn't be played on. And I would think that over time, they would be seeing that there was some issue with them, and they would have been looking maybe last spring or in the fall if these were going to be usable, and if not, over the winter, yes, fall and winter, trying to get with another school, another district, possibly practicing with them, possibly playing with them, until we could find out how to repair these and where to come up with the money. Thank you.
I do just want to point out that at our March 26, 2024 budget deliberation meeting, there was a motion made to cancel a follow-up budget deliberation meeting on the budget, and that was voted on unanimously by all 7 selectmen. So, I mean, at that time, this board had concluded budget deliberation on both the town and Board of Education budgets. So, I mean, there was definitely time to discuss, you know, the Board of Education budget, and I think that, you know, we'll move to a question shortly. But, you know, next is up to the voters to decide. So, you know, and that's what I think the process, as you know, will play out. We have, now we will have an annual town meeting on May 6th, as we do every year on the budget, as well as the following Monday, May 13th, will be our annual town referendum on the budget, where every registered voter and property owner in town is eligible to come and participate in that budget process and make their voice heard. Should, you know, the budget be successful at that point, it will be adopted, but if not, the budget will come back to this board, and we will have to continue deliberations and most likely make some much harder decisions. So, you know, we're gonna have to see where it comes to that. But I just want to point out that we did have plenty of deliberation, and, you know, we were all in agreement on that at one point.
Brian, I'd like to make a suggestion that next year we put a little space there in between, because after all that deliberating, and you also want to soak it in, I don't want to make a rash decision and make that decision that same night. So next year, I'd like to put a little breather in there.
Okay.
Because we've known we've changed our minds in the past about when after deliberations the next time we met. So I'm just saying, I know we did say that we were done deliberating, but I don't think it completely sunk in. So I definitely would like to put a spacer before we end deliberations, that we put a little breathing room in there.
Okay, fair enough. All right, then, any other discussion on this? All right, with that, I'll call for the question on the resolution on the adoption of the proposed 2024 to 2025 fiscal year budget, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Any abstention? So 6 ayes, 1 opposed. No abstention. Thank you. All right. We will move on to approval of minutes. We have a few minutes this evening. We have our minutes from our regular meeting of March 20th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve those?
I make
Okay.
that motion.
All right, got Sean, seconded by John. Any errors, changes, omissions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Next up is our budget workshop from March 19th, 2024. Is there a motion?
I'll move that.
I'll second
All
that.
right, thank you, okay, thank you. I got Jim and John on that. Any discussion, errors, changes?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. And then lastly, we have our budget deliberation meeting from March 26th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I got Sean that time. Any errors, changes, omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? And motion passes. All right. So next up, we have communications and correspondence this evening. We have a presentation from our auditors here this evening. We have Michael Van Dievener, who's a partner, and Heather Seatman, all right, who's a supervisor. So how you doing, guys? Good. Good evening.
Aye.
All right. My name is Mike Van Dievener, again, partner at Mahoney Sable, ultimately responsible for overseeing the audit and issuing the reports on behalf of the firm. Again, joining me this evening is Heather Seatman. Heather was the audit supervisor on the job, ultimately responsible for the execution of our audit procedures. So happy to be here to communicate the results of the town's fiscal year 2023 audit. I do have a presentation. It'll cover the scope of work, the audit reports that were issued, provide some overall financial highlights, and include our required communications. And again, be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So if we could turn to slide 2, in terms of the scope of work, again, no changes from prior years. So we did perform an audit of the town's financial statements. We performed that audit in accordance with both the auditing standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, as well as the government auditing standards issued by the Government Accountability Office. In addition, based on the level of federal and state funding that was received, we did also perform both federal and state single audits. We also performed an agreed-upon procedures engagement on the end-of-school year reports that are filed by the school district with the Department of Education. In addition to those attest services, we do provide some non-audit services for the town. So we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, the schedule of federal awards, the schedule of state financial assistance, and the related notes. We also assist in converting the town's governmental fund financial statements to the government-wide financial statements. In order for our firm to be able to perform those services and remain independent of the town, management is required to oversee and accept responsibility for those services. And again, Tom Robinson, as the Director of Finance, ultimately has accepted responsibility for those services. We do issue a number of reports in connection with our work. In terms of the report on the financial statements, we did issue unmodified clean opinions on your financial statements. Again, an unmodified opinion is expressed when we've concluded that the financial statements have been fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. I do like to point out that our opinion, if you do read it in detail, does provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from a material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. Again, we do not provide absolute assurance. We do not test every transaction. We do utilize sampling in our methodology. The financial statements do include estimates, and therefore we cannot provide absolute assurance. But again, reasonable assurance is still a very high level of assurance. In addition to the report on the financial statements, we do issue a report on compliance on internal control over financial reporting. In this report, we don't actually express an opinion on the town's compliance with laws and regulations or on the effectiveness of the town's internal controls. Essentially, during the course of performing the financial statement audit, if we identified what we consider to be a material noncompliance with laws and regulations or a material weakness in your internal controls, we are required to report it in this letter. Again, we did not report any such matters. In connection with the federal single audit, we issue a report on compliance at the federal award level. In this report, we do actually express an opinion on the town's compliance with your major federal programs. For fiscal year 2023, the total federal awards that were expended by the town was approximately $2.9 million. Your major program was the Community Development Block Grants, which totaled about $659,000. Again, we did issue unmodified opinions on your compliance over that program. We did not report any deficiencies in your grant compliance. So again, that's a clean report as well. We issue a similar report in connection with the state single audit. For fiscal year 2023, the total state financial assistance that was expended by the town was about $7.7 million. The majority of that is your education cost sharing funds, which are not subject to our audit. The remaining portion that was non-exempt was about $2.5 million. Your major programs were the Open Choice Program and the Brownfield Remediation Program. Again, we did issue unmodified opinions on your compliance over those programs. We did not report any deficiencies over grant compliance. So again, a very clean audit in terms of our overall reporting. Next section provides some overall financial highlights. Again, the financial statements are over 100 pages. There's a lot of financial information included in those statements. I'm going to provide some overall financial highlights. Certainly, if I had any concerns or issues from a financial perspective, I would include it in these communications. The first slide talks about your general fund budgetary highlights. Again, your final budget did include the use of fund balance in the amount of $787,000 to balance your revenues and expenditures. Your actual change in fund balance was an increase of about $723,000. So that did result in an overall favorable budgetary variance of about $1.5 million. That was driven by revenues being about $752,000 more than budgeted, and your overall expenditures were about $758,000 less than budget. Again, no budgetary compliance issues were identified, and this information should be consistent with the information that you were getting on a monthly basis, as we had no audit adjustments that impacted your final results. Next slide goes over your governmental fund financial highlights. So this includes your general fund on a GAAP basis, as well as all of your special revenue and capital project funds. The combined ending fund balances for the town totaled approximately $14.9 million. Again, that was an increase of about $1.5 million from the prior year. Of the $14.9 million, just over $8 million is in your general fund. That was an increase of about $651,000 from the prior year. Your capital projects fund had an ending fund balance of about $1.3 million. That was an increase of about $694,000 from the prior year. Your capital non-recurring funds had an ending fund balance of about $2.6 million. That was a decrease of about $434,000 from the prior year. And then all your other funds had an ending fund balance of about $2.9 million, which was an increase of about $671,000 from the prior year. Do point out each year that you do continue to carry unassigned fund balance deficits in your sewer and operating funds. However, you have significantly decreased those deficits over the last couple of years, and again, those were decreased in fiscal year 2023. The sewer operating fund reported an ending deficit of about $294,000, and the water operating fund had a deficit of about $79,000. So again, continue what you're doing, and hopefully that will flip in the years to come. Next slide goes over your government-wide financial statements. So the government-wide financial statements are on a full accrual basis of accounting. It includes all of your long-term assets and liabilities. The focus on the government-wide financial statements are on your long-term liabilities. Overall, the town is reporting a positive unrestricted net position of about $145,000. Your unrestricted net position does incorporate your long-term liabilities for retirement benefits, which ultimately are being funded over time through actuarial determined contributions. In terms of the pension liabilities, the town and the police pension plan were reporting a net pension liability of about $11.1 million. That plan is currently 65% funded. There was an increase in the overall funding percentage from the prior year, which was about 62.4%. Again, no significant changes were made in your actuarial assumptions. In terms of the volunteer firefighter benefit plan, again, you're reporting a net pension liability of about $955,000. Again, an increase in the overall funding percentage from about 34% compared to about 30% in the prior year. Again, also no significant changes in your actuarial assumptions. Again, a lot of information included in the financial statements. I certainly encourage you to go through them and ask questions of management. Happy to answer any questions that you may have at any point in time. This last section goes over our required communications. And again, these communications are really geared towards when the auditor experiences issues during the course of performing the audit. We have certain communication requirements. So these communications are actually brief for the town because we had no significant audit issues. The first item here talks about our audit responsibility under our auditing standards. Although we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, they are the responsibility of town management. Again, it's our responsibility to perform our audit procedures and express our opinion on those statements. In terms of the plan, scope, and timing of the audit, again, no changes in the overall plan scope or timing that was originally agreed upon. Again, all reports were filed by the statutory deadline of December 31st. In terms of significant audit findings, one item we typically will communicate is any new accounting standards that were implemented that impacted the financial statements. Again, there were no new accounting standards that were implemented that had a significant effect on your financial statements. As I mentioned before, there are some significant estimates and judgments included in determining amounts that are presented in the financials. Those consist of estimated useful lives that are assigned to your capital assets, as well as discount rates utilized to determine your net pension and OPEB liabilities. Again, we did deem them to be reasonable and consistent with what other municipalities are utilizing in terms of estimates. Happy to report that there were no significant difficulties encountered in performing the audits. Everything that we requested was provided to us in a timely manner. We had no audit adjustments. There were no uncorrected misstatements. We had no disagreements with management. We did obtain a management representation letter, and again, there was no unusual representations that were requested by us. Just give the board the example if we were testing a transaction and we were unable to substantiate it based on documentation, and we were relying on the representation of management for that transaction, we would communicate that to you. And again, we weren't aware of any consultations by management with any other independent accountants. If we were, again, we have a requirement to communicate that to you. So with that, that ultimately concludes the presentation and overview of the reports that were issued. Again, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mike?
No.
Sounds good.
No, it seems like another clean audit. Mr. Tom's run is intact.
Yeah, we certainly need to thank our finance director, Tom Robinson,
Yep.
for all of his hard work on this again, and thank you, Mike, and Heather as well, again, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Heather. All right, so next up, under communications and correspondence, as I mentioned, I wanted to take a moment to brief the board on the flooding situation at Job's Pond. You may have seen it's been, was on social media. It was also featured, it's been on the news twice now. It was just featured on NBC this evening, actually. And I had an opportunity on Monday evening, along with Representative Carpino, to tour Job's Pond and meet with the neighbors out there to see the water level in person. And it really is quite high right now. I believe it's up 15 feet from their previous point. And just as you know, or as you may be aware, Job's Pond is a kettle hole, and it is influenced by subsurface water. We believe it's tied into the ancient Connecticut riverbed, as the Connecticut River used to go straight right through the center of town, and it didn't have that bend in it as it does today. So there's still a deep river that does exist, and that's actually the same river that we were trying to tap into when we were drilling our test wells, and we were successful, as you may recall. So we need to get that well up and running so we can help, that might help the pond a little bit. But I have been in touch with DEMIS, Emergency Management, with the state. They have been in touch with a number of statewide agencies, DPH, DEP, and everyone is working on finding out what options are available and what could potentially be done. I want to note that this did happen previously. This occurred about 40 years ago in 1984. So this is not unprecedented. Job's Pond is in the 100-year floodplain. So this is something that unfortunately does occur, hasn't occurred for quite some time. But I was able to do some research earlier this week, and I went through the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from 1984, and those are included in your packet. I highlighted the relevant sections so that you all may be aware. Back in 1984, the town worked with the state to explore options to actually pump out the water from Job's Pond and into the Connecticut River. It was not cheap or easy back then. I'm not sure if we'd even be able to do it today. That's one of the things that we're working with our state partners to figure out if we'd even be allowed to, with existing regulations. So I have an email that was sent to me from Josh Signorelli, who is with the emergency management. He's their emergency management area coordinator with Region 3. Josh has been in routine communication with both myself, Representative Carpino, Senator Needleman has been very helpful, along with U.S. Senator Murphy's office as well, and Senator Blumenthal's office have been, all in coordination on this. So I'm going to read this. I did get permission from Josh to send this to the news earlier today, so I feel like I should read it to you all now. But good evening, First Selectman Curley and Representative Carpino. Thanks for reaching out. I hope this message finds you well. I'm happy to provide you with a concise update on the discussion from today's meeting. They had a very large meeting yesterday that we were inquiring about. Following the coordination meeting we had yesterday between DEMIS and DEP, we obtained valuable insights into the tactics utilized in 1984 to address the flooding issue. A sincere thank you for sharing the town meeting minutes, which proved instrumental in our discussions. I emphasized during the meeting that the pumping efforts in 1984 were deemed effective from the town's perspective. Today, our engagement with DPH focused on potential concerns related to septic systems. DPH conveyed that the local health district has been in communication regarding the status of septic systems around the affected pond area. Given the likelihood of submerged septic systems leading to contamination, it is probably a good idea for residents to have water tested prior to swimming. Additionally, it is important to note the unique challenges posed by the pond itself. Research and news articles from the 80s and 90s have indicated that the pond's water level fluctuates regardless of precipitation levels. While the current high water table might account for some of these fluctuations, there are instances where the reasons are less certain. Understanding these dynamics is crucial in formulating effective strategies moving forward. Ryan, as we previously discussed, the feasibility of pumping remains a pertinent question, especially considering the associated costs. As you know, in 1984, there was an 80-20 cost-sharing arrangement for pumping efforts, 80 to the state, 20% to the town back then. We are uncertain if that is available today. DEP is currently looking to see if this is still available to the town, or if there are any other possible solutions that can be passed along to the town. While recognizing the challenges posed by the private ownership of the pond and its lack of public access, we remain committed to finding solutions to alleviate the distress experienced by affected homeowners. The collective determination from all state agencies to assist in any possible manner was evident in our discussions. I know your town stands ready to assist with any public safety concerns that may arise in the coming days as a result of the additional rainfall. Additionally, please do not hesitate to contact me for any assistance or inquiries regardless of the time, as I am available 24/7. Take care, Josh. Josh Cingarelli, Region 3 coordinator. So I did want to just make you all aware, as I mentioned. I don't know if anyone has any comments on this. I'll continue to keep you all aware as I get more information. We continue to stay in contact with the state, and we're doing what we can.
Yeah, Ryan, I guess a couple of questions on when they're evaluating this, and based on where the water levels are today, do we have any folks that are out of power or whose heating systems have been impacted? When the state is looking at the evaluation of not only obviously looking at the septics, which was noted, any challenges with any heating oil, fuel oil, any, for example, gasoline stored in the basement that was, I want to make sure they're looking at that, as well as if there's any pumping, if there's any invasives or anything we have to worry about, is that as well. If we do have folks, do we have folks out of power right now, or folks that are going to have a hard time as the temperature's going to be dropping here?
I believe there are 4 homes that are currently uninhabited for one reason or another. You have to remember that Job's Pond also has seasonal homes,
Yeah.
so some residents are able to go elsewhere, and they have. I have not heard of someone who has been dislocated because of this situation right now, and certainly if any resident is, I encourage them to reach out to my office so we can work with our emergency management team as well.
No, thank you. That's where I was going, making sure we've got those folks covered if they need a place to, shower, charge a phone, get warm, anything of that nature.
So, yeah, and I know Eversource was out Christie and myself asked Eversource to go out to take a look at the poles. There's some submerged, but they came back today, said it's okay now, so that's one less thing to worry about. I know Chatham Health is continuing to monitor the septic situation. I am told that septics can be submerged, in water for a period of time, and I don't have an answer on how long that period of time is, but it's certainly something that we're going to have to continue to monitor. But Chatham Health is aware, as well as I mentioned, the Department of Public Health. So we'll continue to work with our partners.
Excellent, thank you.
Ryan, as I looked through the minutes from 40 years ago, earlier today, I noticed they talked about the height of the pond and the level they wanted to pump the pond down to. And they talked about houses that had water in the basement and things of that nature. Based upon the review, do we have any idea, is it comparable now to 84? Has it exceeded the level of 84, or do we know?
Yeah, I think talking with residents, and now there are plenty of residents at Job's Pond that were there back 40 years ago. There's some 6th, 7th generation homeowners there. And so they have, quite the recollection when it comes to these types of events. From what I understand, the water level is not the highest that it was in 1984, but the concern is that it continues to rise. And so with the additional rainfalls that we're experiencing, that is, one of the concerns. And if you look at the meeting minutes from back then, I think the first report to the Board of Selectmen back then came in July of 1984. It wasn't until late August, early September that there was a special town meeting to allocate the necessary funds for that match. And pumping did not start until late September, early October. So this was 1984, and it still took significant amount of time to get the wheels in motion to get that undertaking. It's a significant undertaking. So but right now we are not sure if we'd be allowed to pump the pond yet, so that's what we're exploring.
Okay, thanks for the update.
You're welcome. All right, so with that, we will move on to item 7 this evening, which is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to comment? And I saw Andrea's hand first. I don't know if you guys want to fight over it, but. And just before we get started, there's going to be a 5-minute count tonight.
I'll take 2.
All right, thanks, Andrea.
Hi, how are you?
Address, please, too, sorry.
Oh, yeah, Andrea Alfano, 3 Plum Rose Court. But tonight I am speaking as a member of the Democratic Town Committee. Today I did send an email to Ryan and to Michael Tierney, and I CC'd all of you, and perhaps you haven't had a chance, I know you have a lot going on, to read it. But I did just want to publicly state a couple of things tonight in relation to that email. And so I'm just going to quickly read one statement and then give a summary on the other. So there were 2 items that I addressed in the email. One was related to vacancies and appointments on boards, commissions, and committees. And the other item were updates to the town website. But in regard to the process for vacancies on boards, commissions, or committees, I'm just going to read to you this statement. The Democratic Town Committee is requesting to refine this process by working together to ensure that both political party chairs be notified of any vacancy on a board, commission, or committee, whether it was held by a Democrat, Republican, or unaffiliated voter. There have been a few instances lately where vacancies were not known to everyone, resulting in potential candidates never having the opportunity to be considered. Our goal collectively should be to find the best candidates to fill vacancies on boards, commissions, or committees, while also adhering to the procedures as documented in the town charter. In terms of the website, I'm not going to get into a big thing there, but there was some discrepant information that I'm sure will be corrected. It may not have even been aware that it was reading differently how you clicked on particular links. But there is one area under the committees that I think it's important in your newly formed, your previously formed Land and Building Usage Committee that has now been staffed. And there are no updates on the website to who the members of that committee are. And I think it's really important that Portland residents have accurate and current information about appointed individuals who are representing our interests. Thanks for your consideration.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. And I agree, we're gonna fix, sometimes the website updates
I know.
can get a little, behind, especially when you have such a turnover sometimes in boards and commissions. But I think that's a great idea, so we do want to get that fixed. And also, if anyone wants to know who is on the Land and Building Usage Assessment Committee, all their names are featured in the meeting minutes as well. So that is publicly posted currently, and we'll work to get those members' names up in that section as well. All right, so we'll move up next up under public comment. Oh, April?
No one does. No one does.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say it is time for our town to have a finance board. The Board of Education currently has a $295,000 deficit, yet they chose to fix the tennis courts for $19,400. I am happy we have courts for our students. However, we as parents have received emails asking for donations of printer paper as they are currently in a spending freeze and do not have enough paper to finish the year. How can we not have paper but find over $19,000 for repairing tennis courts? We also still have 2 leaking roofs at schools that have not been funded for repair. The Board of Ed has a $24 million budget that is overseen by the superintendent and his assistant for business and financial affairs. 2 people controlling 62% of the town's budget is irresponsible. In the next 2 years, we are talking about major financial decisions with school consolidation and developing our own water and sewer infrastructure. These projects will be costing the town over $70 million. We need people in place to oversee our finances. Thank you.
Thank you, April. All right. Anyone else before Ben?
Echo's gonna go after him.
And Ben, they did not yield you the extra time.
So the first thing I would say, hi guys, thanks for serving. Don't time me yet. I haven't
I already
introduced
started.
myself. No, I haven't introduced myself yet. So first, I would like to bring up the 5-minute rule. I think when I was on the Board of Selectmen, we would only implement that if there was a very large crowd. If you only anticipate a few people coming up, I would just urge you not to do the 5 minutes.
This is large for us.
This is what.
Oh, well then I gotta start.
That's pretty large.
Okay, so I gotta start. Ready? Hi. Ready? My name's Ben Serb. I live at 139 West Scott Hill Road. Couple things. Job's Pond, I believe it was 5 feet higher in '84, and I also believe they ran the pipe down the railroad track, and there was a bridge at Breezy Corner, which no longer exists, so that's gonna be a problem, but I could work with you on my kettle pond if they needed to dump in there or something, so whatever. That's near Jim's house. We'll get his permission first. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I wasn't going to bring this up, but Mr. Hernandez did. I do believe in the future, and actually, I'm not sure. I forget names. I'm terrible. The Board of Education, I do believe in time. We should take the building maintenance out of that budget. I served on both boards, so I can speak from both sides, Board of Selectmen and Board of Education. Sometimes you do need to steal the repair money for other things. When you're on the Board of Education side, you get special needs, you get all different things thrown at you. Sometimes you have to put the money somewhere else, and I understand it's a budget in its totality, and you can do what you want with it, but sometimes money that was allocated for a building repair now no longer is. So what I think in the future as a town, we should probably take, seeing that the town does own the facilities, that is you guys, they then take care of the maintenance, but we should put it all back on the town side, in my opinion, and then it's a little more controllable as far as the budget, what you're setting aside, what you're doing with it, that sort of thing. So that's one of the things you guys could potentially look at and see, and then you don't have to worry about the money ever getting switched around and sent somewhere else. I noticed on your agenda, it says discussion about Brainerd Place, so, and I know I already brought this up, but I'm going to do it again, and hopefully I'll articulate it a little better. The town's in a very dangerous position right now. Planning and Zoning on 8/18/22 did an amendment to the Brainerd application, changing it from 2 phases to 3. And in that amendment, they put all of the residential, I take that back, most of the residential in E and F, buildings E and F. And they left a very little in A. And they also lowered the requirement for the commercial down very, very low. putting 60%, give or take, in phase 3. That's where we're at as a town. Planning and zoning did that. It was their decision, their purview. It's done. Here's where we're at. And it was said in the meeting, they may not build the commercial. I want everybody to understand where we're at. We have no more teeth as a community. This mixed development, we have no more teeth from a zoning perspective. They may not build the commercial. I want everybody to understand this. The residential's coming. Hopefully some, if not all, the commercial comes. We as a town want a good mixed-use development. The problem is there's no more teeth on the zoning side. You guys are currently working to renegotiate a tax abatement. Fine, that's your purview. I do believe the non-starter is put it back to a 2-phase. That is the only way you're going to protect this town. Remember that. If it does not go back to a 2-phase, we have no teeth to get what you want as a community. We're in big trouble. I need everybody to fully comprehend this. I want you to work with this developer, but it needs to be what's right for the community. And that needs to happen. If you go to this, I would say, and I believe there's an attorney in the back of the room, I say he's clearly, number 22, he's clearly in default in multiple. I can come up with, there's at least a dozen in performance, and I don't disagree with that section. Number 22 talks about a default in performance. What it doesn't talk about is a breach of contract. Nowhere in this document, and hopefully somebody will enlighten me, does it talk about when you breach the contract. When you breach a contract, you take the teeth out of it. You literally can't even, the contract cannot function when you change some part of the language. And if you take the 2 phases out of this document, you literally try to remove the phrases, 2 phases, the document doesn't function. That's not a breach in performance. Let's be clear. This contract doesn't work. Moving forward, I'm going to wrap this up. Moving forward, you guys need to really, really understand the only way you're going to save this town and get the development you want back to 2 phases. And he has that ability. He can reapply to zoning. He can comply with that. That's how you fix this. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. And I don't even recommend you're in the driver's seat, and I'll be at every meeting trying to help steer you guys. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
And we will be addressing that.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience? Name and address, please.
Mike Angelotti, 4 Victoria Road. I just want to state that I'm not in favor of a 1.03 mil increase. I agree with Mike Hernandez. There should have been a little more deliberation. I thought there'd be some more discussion, more in-depth discussion. I was at a couple of the budget hearings, and it was nothing. I thought tonight was going to be the night, and you already brought the resolution up and passed it. I was like a little shocked that you did it so fast. But last year was 0.83. This year it might be 1.03. You know, when's enough? I mean, you got water and sewer bill is going up. I mean, mine's $2,000 a year between the water and sewer. My taxes keep going up. There's got to be a hard discussion amongst you. You got a school bond you might put it forward. That again will make the mill rate go up. And then next year, next July, it will go up again. So hopefully next time it's a little more in-depth discussion. On the Brainerd tax abatement or tax agreement, I heard Brian Flood's comments a couple weeks ago. I'm in agreement with him. I don't understand why we're giving any tax breaks for anything residential. It makes no sense to me. We're not the only town that does it. I seen it when I was working in Middletown. It just makes no sense why we're incentivizing housing. Commercial I have no problem with. It's beneficial. For every tax dollar we bring in, they get like 60 cents in services. For everything for residential, for $1, it's like $1.35. So I'd just like to make them comments. I agree with Ben also on this, and also agree with April. I mean, something has to be done with the Board of Ed. It's like a runaway train sometimes. We got to reel in some of the cost here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Just want to point out for the record, we have not raised water and sewer rates for at least 3 years. As long as
I think it's, yeah, I think 2019 maybe.
Okay.
Or, no, I'm sorry,
But
maybe
I do agree
2020,
they are high,
2021.
and we're working to get them lower. I'm trying, Ben. Is anyone else in the audience? If not, well, I believe there's some people remotely. Anyone online? Dave Murphy? Okay, great. Dave, just name and address, please. Well, I guess we know your name.
Yeah, Dave Murphy, 40 Chancellor Drive, Portland. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make a quick comment back to something said originally. Just to remind everybody, as part of the budget process, there is a long-range capital committee that talks to every group in town and what their needs are. And they come to the board with a recommendation, and it's actually part of the budget that I think gets ignored a lot. And there's always, in the past years that I've been here, from 10 or 15, most of those capital improvements have been ignored by the board of selectmen. So to say that that there's been a lack of the capital expenses been addressed, well, that's a function of whether you get the money and someone actually addresses them. A good example is in the flat when there's $200,000 for roof replacement. So if you a roof fixing, if you don't do that, then you're going to find missing ceiling tiles when the roof leaks. So I'm just making that comment. And then a secondary comment is that people are talking about the expenses and hopefully the new school that we desperately need, because once you don't do any capital expenses, you're going to find ourselves in the shape we're in right now where we need to do something drastic. So hopefully with the spa, the Brainerd Place, and some of the other things coming to town, we can increase the revenue side, because we know the expense side has to go up. It does every year, has every year since I've been in town. So we just need to come to that realization and then say, how can we work on the revenue side? That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
All right, we have someone else as well?
All right, just turn my video on. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Jen Witchy, and I live at 21 Cody Lane. And I just wanted to say that I am incredibly disappointed in the disparaging statement that was read at the start of this meeting. As a teacher and parent in town, it's definitely been challenging to navigate the many years of budget freezes. But as the budgets have been presented at the Board of Education meetings, I've learned a lot about why we are in repeated deficits. And I feel that tonight's statement shows a blatant lack of understanding of the drivers of the Board of Education budget. And it would appear a lack of effort to understand why. I applaud and appreciate our Board of Education and the leadership of our school district to find creative solutions to the many challenges that have been presented, especially where the budget is concerned. I watch just about every Board of Ed meeting, and I would hope that moving forward, more effort is made by our selectmen to understand how the Board of Education budget is built and how unplanned student outplacements in particular impact the budget. And for all those who are frustrated with the Board of Education budget, I would imagine that the school consolidation plan would be something that people would want to support in order to eliminate redundant spending. That's a big part of our problem right now. So I do want to say thank you for your service. I do appreciate it, and for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen. Is there anyone else in person or in the chat before we close public comment? Last call. There's another opportunity later on in the meeting, so if you change your mind, you can do so then. All right, so with that, we'll move on to item 8 tonight, and this is a discussion on the Brainerd Place tax agreement. So you may recall, for a while now, in a number of meetings, both in executive session and then publicly, this board has been debating and discussing the tax agreement that we have in place that many of us inherited when we were elected. Some I don't know. Some of us may have served at the time in 2017 when it was initially voted on by this board, and then it has been amended in 2021 by another previous board, and then we added an amendment as well in 2022. So we've been dealing with this, for a long time. We've been discussing the Brainerd Place project for a very long time, and progress is underway now, as you all can see, but there is more work to do. So I thought it would be important. I think some questions were raised at the last meeting that are certainly worth addressing. So what I did was I invited our town attorney here today, who who worked with me and this board to review the amendment to the agreement that we're talking about now. If Matt, if you don't mind coming up, what I'd like to do is to go through some of the questions and then occasionally maybe, reach out to you if you have any additional thought. But, so Matt is an attorney with Shipman and Goodwin, and Matt inherited this like myself, right, from a
It's
predecessor.
had many authors. Yes.
So with that, in your packets this evening, you do have the amended and restated agreement to fix assessment on real property that we discussed at a previous meeting. The only change is that the site plan, which was separate, but it was included in the packet, we've now put into the agreement. That was a formality that for the sake of our conversation, I didn't feel needed to take place, but if this were to get approved and go on the land records, that would happen. So I just wanted to, so with that, that's the only modification. Everything else is the same as what we talked about previously. So there's, this may come as a surprise to some of you, but I do read the comments on the Portland community page. I follow along in the River East, and I read social media, and I do see, I think there's a lot of confusion with tax agreements in general, which is why I invited Matt this evening to answer questions from the board and to go over this. And so let me just say, one of the big misconceptions is that we're getting no revenue from the developer during this abatement. I've seen a lot of comments that have questioned the amount of revenue that the town's receiving or will be receiving during the length of any tax agreement. So I do, before, we'll get to that later, but I do have projections. I have estimates from our town assessor, as well as information from our building official regarding permit fees that the town has already collected, as well as the projections on all of the buildings that are proposed, as well as the motor vehicle taxes. And I did not go into the water and sewer, but we'll talk about revenue later. But I do want to ensure the town that revenue is currently being received and would be continued to be received with this tax agreement. But so let me just go through some of the questions, Matt,
Sure.
and then we'll go from there. So one of the questions was, what is the benefit to the town of Portland to amend this agreement? What does the municipality get out of this? So I'm gonna take a little shot at this, and just so people kind of understand where tax agreements come from. This is a tool that municipalities use all across the state and the country to incentivize business. It is meant to attract businesses, encourage economic development, and promote job creation. Some of the benefits include economic growth, because tax abatements can potentially stimulate economic growth by attracting businesses to the area. They can lead to increased job opportunities, long-term revenue growth. I think this is important. While tax abatements may result in a temporary reduction in tax revenue for the municipality, the long-term benefits of economic growth, job creation, and increased property values can outweigh the short-term costs. As businesses thrive and expand, they contribute more to the local economy, ultimately leading to sustained revenue growth for the municipality. Competitive advantage. So when it's tough when other towns are offering tax abatements, because oftentimes we need to kind of keep up with our neighbors. I know I've reviewed some tax abatements in our neighboring Cromwell that have been much more favorable to developers than our abatement. And so it's difficult, puts the town in a position when we're trying to keep up with our neighbors and get that competitive edge. And then revitalization of undeveloped areas. I mean, I don't want to speak for the previous board, but that Brainerd Place property, that Elmcrest property was vacant and uninhabited and kind of falling apart for many, many years. And part of the purpose of the tax abatement is currently and continues to be to incentivize the development and the rehabilitation of those historic buildings, as well as attract more business in town. And so to talk about why I think this board wanted to amend the agreement that was currently or previously in place, I want to note that, and like I said, we'll get to revenue, but I think one of the reasons was because this new agreement included restoring and the restoration of the Hart Jarvis House, which was previously not included in the previous tax abatement. So that was one benefit to the town by trying to work with the developer on modifying this agreement. And also, based on the projections from our assessor, you may recall, and this is another misconception that I think it needs to be stressed. We are not incentivizing, nothing in that agreement incentivize additional apartments over the 240 that had already been approved back in 2017. So this board, the first thing that the developer said to me, when he said he wanted more apartments, I said, well, you're not getting any money. We're not giving a dime of incentive for those additional apartments. Because of that, the revenue to the town is projected to be over $3 million additionally, additional tax revenue over the next 7 years because of that. So there is a significant amount of revenue that the town would enjoy on those apartments, on those 108 apartments, according to our assessor, and I have a memo and the details of that as well that I can share. But I think it's important to mention that those are the benefits to the town, is that, ultimately, we, I think as a board, we don't want a half-finished product. We don't want dirt on the corner of Main Street and Route 66. So we've been trying to work together and in collaboration.
Yeah, just one thing on that point, now that Schedule A has been inserted into the document, it says 240 apartment units, right? And so I think that's important to note. I know there was some confusion because it wasn't in there. That's where it's in the body of the document. The schedules in the exhibit are incorporated, if you see in the agreement, into the overall agreement. They are very much a part of the agreement, as if they were, could be on page 1, or could be the exhibits. They are incorporated into the entire document, and that's where you'll see that number.
Thank you, Matt.
If someone wanted to put it in the document, sure, you could. It would be redundant, but if someone wanted to, you could. Yeah.
And exactly. So section 1.3 of our proposed agreement says eligible buildings means the buildings shown on Schedule A of the amended and restated application is Building A, and in parentheses it says limited to all commercial space, because we do want to incentivize the commercial space, and 11 apartments. And those 11 apartments are the historical apartment. There are always 11 apartments in Building A. So that's part of that 240. Everything on top of that additional 108, the town would get the full tax revenue from day one on that. So thank you, Matt. Let's see. There was a question on affordable housing. I just want to mention, these are all market rate apartments. There is no affordable housing component with this project. The developer has not discussed with me at all any mention of affordable housing. So I don't, no previous agreement had any mention of it, so I don't know why we'd include it today. So I wanted to mention that. Who wrote the agreement? Well, like I mentioned, we inherited the agreement, but does it matter, Matt?
No, I mean, Shipman & Goodwin has reviewed every draft of the agreement, but there's no bias, whether his lawyer or Shipman & Goodwin started with the document. I actually think Shipman started drafting the document. Whoever drafts the amendments, if they're agreed to, there's no bias if it went to a court or something like that as to who drafted it. And there's no negative inference to the town because the lawyer for them drafted, and vice versa. Just because Shipman might have drafted something, it doesn't work the other way as well. There's no issues with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the questions was on the phasing. So we did spend some time talking about the phasing. The previous amendment did mention phasing. I do want to note this current agreement does mention phasing as well, and that's once again in the site plan. And as you see, the phasing is all spelled out on that. Let me see. Also, I just want to note, pursuant to the agreement, the developer has agreed to complete construction on the entire project on or before March 14th, 2029. So with that, or he will lose the tax abatement for any building not completed by that date. In addition, Exhibit A, which is attached to the agreement that we talked about, is incorporated. So really, it's 5 years. The board was planning on giving the developer less than 5 years to complete the project. There was a question on, I believe the previous agreement had 10 years from 2017. So the project at Brainerd Place was originally scheduled to be completed by 2027. Now, if you drive by, you see a lot of work going on, but I don't expect it to be completed in the next 3 years. Although I think we'd all like it to be. I think this board thought it realistic that we added the 2 years because chances are it would be totally completed by 2029. But I also want to mention that in the agreement, each building, if you look on, Exhibit A.
Yeah, page
So
11.
Exhibit A has a description of the proposed parcel, and it lists each building with a completion date by the following buildings. And I think it's really important to note this, because although the project in its entirety has to be completed by March of 2029, each building has its own separate date. The only building that was pushed out that far out was that Building A, that last of that proposed apartment building that is before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, buildings, Brainerd House, which is one of the historic homes, that completion date is March 14th, 2026. That's less than 2 years from now. So if the developer does not complete, and I want you to confirm that, if the developer does not complete the Brainerd House by March 14th, 2026, we could find him in default of the agreement.
Subject to you revising the agreement and giving him, or him curing it within 60 days of your notification to him, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at the definition of project on page 3, 1.8 is the site there, right? I mean, again, it incorporates Schedule A. It talks about requiring approval by Plan and Zoning Commission of the Town of Portland. And the last sentence, right, construction is anticipated to begin by the end of 2021, and buildings will be completed pursuant to dates listed per building in Exhibit A. And then you have Exhibit A incorporated there too. Those are the timelines that are expected to be met under the agreement. You know, at the end of the day, if the developer is going to miss it by 6 months and wants to come to you, that's your business decision about whether you want to give the developer more time if you want to amend the agreement. But you also could give him notification that he's in default to the agreement, and then the agreement would take over from there. Absolutely.
And as you all know,
But a lot of this is business calls on your part, right? I mean, the agreement is a legal document, right? And certainly gives you different options you can pursue. You have to decide how you want to handle this project ultimately with this developer. And if you want to have every date be a hard date, that's your choice. If you want to give someone an extension or more time or make amendments, that's your choice. That's a business call, right? That's not a legal question at the end of the day.
And we have notified the developer that he's been in default of the agreement before.
We have, yep.
And he has cured that within the 60-day window. So I don't think this board is afraid to hold the developer's feet to the fire as needed. But at the same time, there's a lot of trucks moving over there working. So progress is being made. Let's see. Other questions? We addressed most of these. The amount of commercial square footage, there was a question again about, you know, it didn't say it in the body of the agreement, but it's all spelled out in Schedule A.
Correct.
And it lists the amount of square footage of commercial space. And just for the record, that amount of commercial square space that is still in this iteration of the plan is over 83,000 square feet. So I've heard a lot of people say that there's no commercial in that. I mean, that is more than the entire Adams Plaza for people who, you know, want something to compare it to. So this agreement still means that there is commercial space.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add too, I mean, having negotiated with the attorney for the developer, right, back a couple of years ago, particularly during COVID, where this really hit a snag was over commercial development. I'm sure you all know that as a board. But they were very clear with us that the market had changed, they were having problems doing certain things, and they did come back and request that, and the board approved it. But it's not a secret that the commercial has been probably the most hot button issue for the negotiations, that and the timeline for them, as they were trying to line up financing. Yeah.
And so this board wanted to make sure that if the developer was going to build the apartments, we were going to be able to make sure that what we wanted got done too, and that's why we put in some stipulations on that.
Yeah,
right?
and the original agreement too, I believe, used the term up to, right? I think it said up to 111,000. Don't quote me on that. Well, I mean, up to is not shall be 111,000 too. So there was always flexibility under the original agreement. I think that realistically they knew they were never going to come close to that number, and to avoid that, that's where they came back and revised it ultimately. But it was not if I recall, the first version itself was not a guarantee of square footage. It was just an up to amount.
That's correct. I also,
Which is carefully chosen words, trust me, right? up to, so.
So just section 8.7 of the proposed agreement, complete the exterior construction to building C, G, and H. Those are the 3 historic homes. So
Yep.
so this board put in, and we all talked about it, that the developer had to complete the exterior of the homes before he could get a certificate of occupancy on the second apartment building. So I think it's worth noting that language is in there, and
And Exhibit A, you have to finish those buildings by a certain date, right? So I think there was some concern about, is he only gonna do the exterior? Well, he has to finish, it has to be completed, there's a definition of completed in the agreement, by those dates. So C, G, and H are in 26 and 27. I only can imagine that perhaps he thought the timing of it was such that they maybe get the exterior done while that other building, that was building F, was gonna be wrapping up, and wanted to just kind of keep the construction going. But in terms of the commitment to finish the agreement, it's absolutely spelled out in the agreement. It's not just the exterior, it'd be both the exterior and the interior. He just has more time to do the interior as building F wraps up.
And so, thank you, Matt. I want to read section 1.5, which describes a completed building. A completed building means, I, an eligible building for which a temporary or permanent certificate of occupancy has been issued by town, i.e., all floors of such eligible building has been received a temporary or permanent certificate of occupancy, or 2, any portion of building which has received a temporary or permanent certificate of occupancy. And I just want to know is, I see our building official is with us, Peter Wilsey. I'm not sure if he just wants to, I'm not sure. Pete, can you turn your mic on? Do you have anything to add on as far as what a completed building means? If you're with us?
Now I have, yeah. A completed building, in order to get their certificate of occupancy, it has to be what they call substantially compliant with what has been submitted in for the plan review. That means that, yes, you need to have the lighting, you need to have the electricity, the water, everything going on. Items such as painting the walls or putting carpeting down the floor, that is not considered a requirement to get your certificate of occupancy. It's that you need to have all the essentials in there. And we're working right now with the architects on the Brainerd house. We did get 2 building permits to work on the shells for the Hart Jarvis and for the Brainerd house. And we're going to I'll be signing tomorrow so they can start working on it. But to get the certificate of occupancy, everything that must be completed or substantially completed to make sure the building is safe and be able to work in there.
Thank you, Pete. And just to clarify, so one of the concerns that I have, I know the board has, that would mean the structural integrity of all the homes as well for a quote-unquote completed project, right?
Correct. And what I spoke to Mark Avery, I think his last name is, from DeMarco, they're going to be having a structural engineer go through the buildings to take a look at, especially the Hart Jarvis building, to see if there's any issues with that as far as structural. And if there is, they have to repair it to the way it was prior. So in other words, if you've got a house and you get substantial damage to your house, and it was built with 2x4 construction, you could use 2x4 construction to rebuild it, that area, versus today's code, you might need to have 2x6 and better insulation. So it has to be built back to the way it was prior to any sort of damage.
And just to talk about the reason, we talked as a board about the reason why we're not requiring the carpeting and the painting of the wall first is that we don't know what businesses are going to go in yet. So we want the buildings to be ready for business, but we also understand that until there's a business that's committed, it could be built. It needs to be built to suit whatever that is. So but the structure would be intact. So I just want to thank you, Pete, for clarifying all that. I think that's important because that was certainly a misconception on that.
You can take a look at building, the Starbucks building. Yeah, they bring it all out, but they're waiting for Starbucks to send in the final permit and final layout, which should be within the next couple of days.
That's true. That's another rumor that Starbucks had pulled out. We're hitting them all. I have a voicemail from the employees, the higher-ups at Starbucks to confirm the region, I forget its title, but if anyone wants to listen to the voicemail, I'm happy to play it for you. So Starbucks is coming, I believe, in the fall, so stay tuned on that. Let's see, so I think we hit most of everything. Just to highlight, as far as the zoning regulations, there was a question on whether or not we're requiring zoning regulations to be met, and it is spelled out, and Matt, you highlighted that.
23B, yeah.
Yeah, which is, it says, it's important to note that any such modifications shall require approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the town of Portland. That's what we're seeing take place now, so.
Yeah, and then also 23B, right? BRT and its principles shall remain in good standing with the town and, the property, blah, blah, and shall not be a material violation of the town's zoning regulations, building code, or any other ordinance, statute, or code that may be applicable to the project or the property. It's a pretty good catch-all sentence there, so. Yeah.
Thank you, that's great.
And I think it goes without saying they have to be in compliance, whether you put it in there or not, but it is in there. Yeah.
Let's see. We talked, I think we've hit just about everything. It was pointed out there was a couple holdover language items there's some housekeeping items that had no impact on the agreement that just were, I guess, in there, but we can remove those, and so, but that's because we've been redrafting this for 10 years or however.
Yeah, and, I'll just say this, I mean, I work with a lot of municipalities, probably over 50 in the state, small, really small, Portland smaller and larger, and cities. Look, at the end of the day, you get great suggestions when you go to public hearings and meetings, right? Whether it's from the public, boards like yourselves, I mean, pass them along to Ryan, and we'll certainly look at them. There's always good ideas and suggestions. Ultimately, it's up to the board and the first selectman to make these decisions, but, there's people catch good things sometimes. There's no offense to that, or no one's hurt by that. Their feelings aren't hurt. Send them along. We always want to make the agreement as good as we can for the town. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is still a living document that can be changed.
Yep.
So those are, I think, the items that I wanted to clear up, but, since Matt is here, I wanted to open it up to questions. Is there anything, now's the time. I think, anybody, am I missing things? Is there anything else? Because I want to clear up misconceptions while we can, because I think it's important. There's just too much misinformation that's floating around. So, I think it's just important to highlight facts.
I think you hit the high points.
The main ones I've seen out there.
Was there any, let me just ask you, between the previous agreement and this agreement, were there any substantial differences?
I mean, timing's been extended, right?
Yeah.
The commercial space is smaller, arguably,
Yeah.
right? But I think people work through that, but they're pretty much the same idea, right? Or, the assessments are the same, that hasn't changed, the fixed assessments, right? Those are all identical. So not really, right? And most of the changes, the other changes you mentioned were pretty small, right? That's when there was defaults. He had to cure them, right? The big one is, this one was big, and then the other big one was, I think, in
21 and 2017.
Yeah, those are the big ones, yeah. So, yep.
Nobody else has any questions for Matt, I guess. Thank
Okay.
you. But if you want to hang out, because we're going to talk about the revenue projections from our assessor.
Okay,
So,
on this?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So in your packets, I included some projections, because it's another misconception that I've heard, is that the town is not enjoying any revenue on this Brainerd Place project. So I'm going to read this memo from our assessor, Rich Lasky. It says, to Ryan Curley for Selectmen, this is dated today, the market values and building site data currently being used for the proposed Brainerd Place assessment is only to be used in reference for preliminary calculating fixed tax incentive and potential tax revenue, as if the project was in a completed stage. While currently under construction, proposed building uses and square footage have been obtained from town building permits and available site plans. Comparable commercial sales data has been utilized to obtain a ballpark replacement cost, new values on cost a per foot basis for various types of commercial and apartment use. Income valuation methods have yet to be explored at this time due to limited resources. It should be noted that the final net assessments to be used for taxation will vary depending on final completed inspections and as more thorough appraisal methods are able to be conducted. So, I mean, that's just to preface, these are numbers that I think are in the ballpark, but as Rich explains, they're not to be, taken, to the bank with it yet. But what you see before you here in your packet is you have the Brainerd site plan, and then you have a new proposed Brainerd Place site plan. So this is the tax abatement under the previous agreement and the previous model. So that would be the old building A, which had the 70,000 square feet of commercial space and the 11 apartments that was there, and the CVS pad site on the corner. So that was the first one is the one that planning and zoning had already approved. That's the one that we've been working with for the past 7 or 8 years. And so what you see here is what the assessor did is he is attempting to calculate the total square footage of each one of those buildings, and he has a projected cost per square foot, and then he uses that and calculates what the estimated market value of each building would be once it's completed and gets a CO, and then what the assessed value would be on that, which is 70% of the market value. So what you see, and we can just take building A, for instance, which originally was that largely commercial component. So according to these projections, which would fluctuate, but it's just to give us an idea, Rich has the estimated market value of that first building being $14,600,000 in the old plan. Now, the assessed value of that, of 70% of that, would be $10,220,000. In year one, so the agreement, as Matt mentioned, we have the same percentages with this fixed tax agreement, so it's 15% in year one. 15% of what the town would typically tax is how much we would receive in year one. Mm-hmm. So 15%, and we use the mill rate that we proposed today of 34.3, and with that fully, if there was no tax agreement in place, the full revenue that the town would receive on that old building, of building A, would be $350,000 per year. At the 15% rate per the tax agreement, the town would get $52,000, roughly $52,500 a year in the first year. And then each year of the tax abatement, it's 15% in year one, 15% in year two, 20 in year 3 and 4, then it goes to 30 in year 5, 35 in year 6, 40 in year 7, and by year 8, the town enjoys the full tax revenue. So that's how the agreement works. So the difference between that building and then the new building is the new building has an estimate. The new building A, the one that would be the additional apartment buildings that's being proposed, has an estimated market value of $26.1 million. So with that 26.1 million again would be subject. The only thing that would be subject, it's worth noting on building A of the new plan, remember, we're not incentivizing those additional 108 apartments. So the only the amount of market value, or excuse me, assessed value that would be subject to the tax agreement would only be 4.6 million. The additional 13 million would be taxed fully. So the revenue that the town would receive in year one is this is with the tax abatement in place, is estimated to be $491,548. So the difference being almost $500,000 in year one to $50,000 in year one of the old plan. So to say that we're giving more of an incentive to the developer is not true. In fact, the town would be receiving $449,000 more in revenue in years 1 and 2, $442,000 more in years 3 and 4, $430,000 more in year 5, $424,000 in year 6, $418,000 in year 7, and then the full difference is $343,000. So it's a significant amount of it's. I believe when you add it all up, it's over $2 million additional dollars estimated with the current proposed tax agreement. So if anything, I think the town is receiving more revenue. In addition, there's some projections on motor vehicle taxes, because there's all the tenants in the apartment, we're getting, the 240 apartments that are already slated to come in, according to Rich, again, would be approximately 276 cars. You have to remember that if there's 240 apartments, there's only 30% of those apartments are two-bedroom. Primarily, they're single bedrooms. So I think what Rich did was he took 240, assuming, and then took 70% of that, and then used one car. And then for the two bedrooms, I think he used 1.5 to get a rough ballpark. So the tax revenue on motor vehicles in the old plan that the town would receive estimated to be approximately $91,000 per year. And under the new proposal with the additional apartments, Rich estimated that with 348 apartments, there would be approximately 400 cars, which would be a tax revenue of $132,440. So I wanted to highlight that, because I think it's important to talk about revenue. And then in addition, I want to thank Pete Wilsey again he added up all of the permit fees that the town has received so far. And just in permit fees alone, between 2023 and 2024, we have received $232,230 in permit fees revenue to the town. So, the town is enjoying revenue from this. I thought it was important. I can share, if anybody wants these projections, I'm happy to share them. And if you have any questions, I know Rich would be happy to explain all that. But that's I think, the end of my discussion. Does anybody else have anything on this before we wrap it up?
I have just one question. Like, every developer in history, once they get the tax abatement or lack of a tax abatement, don't they always lawyer up and knock down the assessed value from what we think it's worth to what they think it's worth, and always knock like hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars off the assessed value?
Well, they can appeal the assessment, right? But it'd be a good question for the assessor, right? Because when the building is completed, right, and it gets its first assessment, my assumption would be they're going to get the assessment, and then it's going to be fixed for 5 years. It's probably going to be fixed for the term of the 7 years, right? So I don't, they might have the right to appeal it that first year, but we should check that with the assessor. I don't know if they have the right to appeal that or not. It's a good question, actually. So let us look into that.
Yeah, just
it's a good
watching
question.
other developers out there, and that's pretty much seems
if
like
the assessment is fixed. Yeah, it's a good question.
They always seem to fight it, and then it's like their lawyers versus our lawyers type of deal.
Yeah, and it may be covered in here, but let me look at that tonight, and we'll get back to you through Ryan, okay? That's a very good question, yeah.
And then actually, just one thing there. They may not, there was a comment about may not be building commercial. We did purposely put in the agreement that the developer would not be able to get a certificate of occupancy on that third apartment building unless building B, which is the 32,000 square feet of retail space on the corner and commercial space on the corner of Main Street and Route 66, was built. And the developer has to build that no matter what in order for any tenants to be able to move into building A. So this board tried very hard to tie the developer to forcing what we want, which is more commercial and retail space, to having to put those apartments up, which is the trade-off that this board, is trying to work around. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Ryan, I got one question. What is the status of building B? Is it that they have a CO for building B before they can move into building A?
Well, it's right in the agreement. Let me pull it up.
Yeah. Because building B and having a CO for building B is two different things.
Well, it was a CO for building A, but let me.
It's on 8-8.
Yep. It says complete building B, including B1 and B2. That was both buildings on the corner. Each one is 16,000 square feet. 2 stories of commercial and retail space with that skywalk in between. And the images, if anyone wants to see the renderings, they are on the town website as well. So I think it's important to note it. So the developer must complete building B, including B1 and B2, and the interior of building G, which is the historic Brainerd House, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for building A. So. is, also, Matt, there was a point about a two-phase versus a three-phase. A two-phase is the only way to get what we want. I don't know, I feel like we have things in here, no?
I mean, that's really a business decision, right? I mean, you have the list of when the buildings are completed. Whether they're done in 2 phases or 3 phases is your call, right? I think the developer was looking for a little more flexibility to have 3 phases, and again, extend the years out, which might have made sense, but you would have to tell us, do I think at the end of the day, this agreement has no teeth if it has 3 phases? I don't agree with that statement, but if the Board of Selectmen want to do 2 phases, you could do that, right? It's really your call at the end of the day. The point is, these dates have to be met, or there's a default to the agreement, as the first selectman said earlier, right? And that's an important part of this agreement. And you have the plan as Schedule A. And that's the expectation from the town. If and when this is signed and executed, that's the expectation from the town. Yeah. And it's a really good point. Looking at this, it looks like sections 2 and 3 get into the assessments, but I want to sit down and look at that and make sure. It seems to say that it's a 7-year fix, which was my initial reaction, right, the term of the agreement. But let me make sure and double check that. But that would my assumption would be it would be assessed, and then you would add the percentages over 7 years, and there would hopefully not be an appeal right. But I'll look at that. Okay. That's why it's good to come to meetings. You get good thoughts. So.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, you know, the Board of Selectmen, we have no control over what planning and zoning approves. This is the method that we do have control over, and so you know, this board I think worked pretty hard to put together an agreement that held the developer to, you know, a plan of a completed Brainerd Place project. And so, as Matt said, you know, we believe it has teeth, and we're not afraid to enforce this agreement because we've done it before. We'll do it again. But you know, really, it's up to planning and zoning. But I think that this agreement is pretty good, honestly.
And at the end of the day, right, the hook the town has is you're agreeing to fix the assessment, right? If the developer decided, I'm not going to do a building, and therefore I get no tax fixing assessment, I mean, he could do that, right, at the end of the day. But then they run, you know, at the end of the day, the developer has rights too, right? And so we can't 100% force the developer to do anything that he does not want to do. It's if he wants to take advantage of the benefit the town is providing to him, right, which is a tax fixing agreement, he has to comply with this agreement, right? And clearly he wants it because he's at the table with you to negotiate it. If he didn't want the tax fixing agreement, if he didn't want any benefit from the town, you would never have to deal with this, and he would go do what he wanted to do on his property, as long as it complied with plan and zoning, right? So he clearly wants something from the town, that's why he's here.
Brian, I have one more question. Sure. With Exhibit A, how come Building B, it says portion of building for both Building B1 and B2?
Because building B1 and B2, it says building B1 is the portion, it says portion of building B along Main Street. That's the section of the building that's on Main Street. And then there's the other section that's on Marlborough Street.
It's just defining the two.
It's just defining which building is being built.
It's not a portion of it.
It's not a, it's not a
That's
portion.
what I wanted.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
That's what I
Any other questions? I think we can move on if there's no other questions.
thought. No, I think.
I just have one, and it might be something for Matt.
Sure.
With Building B, there's no residential plan for it.
Okay.
Is that something that we can put in there, that there could never be apartments in that building?
Yeah. I mean,
So in 2 years, when he comes to us with a sad story again and says, I can't rent commercial space,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
that no matter what, Building B can never have apartments in it.
Yep. Now, I mean, yes, and of course, in 4 years, if it's a different board of selectmen, they could amend it, right?
Yeah.
But you could certainly put it in there, absolutely. So
Okay.
building B would have no residential. Yeah, we can put that
I
in
think
there.
we're all in favor of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's subject to you all agreeing on that, and I'll work through the first selectman's office to provide drafts of what that would look like, but yeah,
Okay.
you can certainly do that.
Yeah, sounds good.
I got some homework to do, I think. Yeah, and I think what we'll do is we'll tighten up the appeal stuff. But I think we do need to get the assessor's perspective on how that would work. If you can, under the statutes, if you can go beyond the 5 years, right? Normally you assess every 5 years, and then you have the right to appeal that. We just have to confirm that. We'll look at the statutes on that.
Yeah, I asked Rich, I was hoping you'd be able to make it. He had a conflict.
Yeah, no,
or something,
that's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, no. Matt?
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very, very much.
Matt.
I appreciate it
Thank you,
very
Matt.
much.
Thanks, Matt.
We'll get this revised thing to you hopefully in the next week or so. So, thanks.
You don't have anything else going on?
I'm going on vacation, so, it's
Where
spring
you
break
go-
for the
where you
kids, so
going then?
we're going to Arizona,
Yeah.
so give me a little time.
I had a feeling you might be
Yeah.
in it there.
Some warm, dry weather.
Thank you all.
Thank you, man.
All right. Lost my agenda with all the paperwork. All right, so the next item is the item 9, which is appointments of our auditors. So as we had previously, we had the presentation of our auditors. We have to appoint our auditors for the next year. There's a resolution in your packet. I think if someone would like to move that?
I'll move the resolution. Resolution, Board of Selectmen, Town of Portland, Connecticut, April 3rd, 2024. Appointment of the Auditor of Public Accounts. Resolved that pursuant to Section 407 of the Portland Town Charter, the Board of Selectmen hereby appoints the firm of Mahoney Sabal of 180 Glastonbury Boulevard, Suite 400, Glastonbury, Connecticut, 06033, to audit the books and records of the town for the fiscal period July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on this?
Nope.
I'll take it.
I want to thank Mike for sticking around this time. You didn't have to, but thank you. With that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. All right, the next item is, it's our first meeting of the month, which means it's our financial meeting. Our finance director, Tom Robinson, is with us this evening to go over our monthly financials. So he's going to come up in just a second. Now, I don't know, having just gone through the budget process, I don't know how involved you want to go with the monthly budget report this evening, but it's up to you.
If he's got anything that he wants other than that.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So I know we hit a bunch of the, good evening all. I know we hit a bunch of these areas last time, so I'll try to be brief. I'll go over the revenues, and I think most of the expense issues or items, areas that we had concerns, we had talked about. But just revenues, 0001, property tax prior year, 0012, this is on page 1 of the revenue, front page. The property prior taxes is 488,000. We're positive by about 233,000. Interest and leads is about 230,584, positive by 80,584. This is primarily due to the pushing with the tax sale process. There were a few other collections from sales that were higher in the year, but you know, those proceedings have definitely helped these areas. We're gonna, you know, we still have the actual tax sale to occur. I believe that's on May 1st. Count 00201, pilot state-owned tiered. That's up, you know, positive by 1808. Those are state grant funds that come in, so that's a, you know, a positive increase. As we talked about 00312 conveyance, we're about 151,612. We have about a remaining of 23,387. So that seems like a number that we'll probably have a good ability to hit. So that's positive. Recording fees, when you look at that, and one it's 00314. That one's maybe a little harder to hit, but sometimes in the when the warm weather comes, there's some more activities that occur where there's sales and transactions going on. 00324 is police private duty. You know, revenues are still coming in quite strong. We budgeted 201, we're at 196. We do have the offsetting expenditure that will, you know, those are a little higher. Generally, we have to do a supplemental appropriation of revenue and expense on that. And this, we may do that, we need to do that again as the expenses are over on that line item, but we'll see as that goes on. It's not terribly over yet. We'll have to see if the activity is picking up in April and May. So we'll keep reviewing that with the police. Structural permits at 311-5729. We're about 557-728 to the positive. Definitely some of these areas that we've talked, that, you know, we're talking about, you know, Brainerd Place and those type of permits coming in have been a positive to the fund. 00337 hearings, we're at about 10,213. We're about 2,213 over the budget on that line item. Some different activities that came in, it seemed like on Portland Cobalt Road and some Brown Stone Avenue activities that came in March seemed to kind of drive that up. It was a decent amount in March, and as we said, interest continues to be strong. At this point, interest isn't recorded yet, as the bank statements are still coming through. So I'm pretty sure you see a zero revenue effect in the month, but the interest is still strong. On the expenditures, page 5, police private duty. I just wanted to, you know, hit upon that where we budgeted around 150,000, and we're at about 159 to date. So that's one of the ones, like we said, we got to keep watching. Obviously, clearly the revenue is coming in at a stronger level than the expenses as projected based on the you know, mark up or fee that's designed on that. 023, we talked about that, 32,000. Conference meetings and dues, which kind of incorporates training, but it's a couple high-priced trainings in there, and then there continues to be training and further requirements for the various officers. So that's one of those ones. You know, I think this year, because we had a couple of those high trainings, we're going to be over, where I think as long as we don't have those special high trainings in the future, you know, we should be able to fall back into the line item where we once was. We talked in 036, 4403, 6103, 6103, all are areas that we're continuing to watch. They all look like they're going, that was on page 8. You know, they're all slightly right now over, but there are encumbrances within there, so we need to see how those come out. 73,000, if the item is purchased, it will drive that over on that. So he's watching the global budget. So the global budget still seems good. We're just watching those line items. 037, building maintenance, 4403. That's really the big, you know, driver of the one we got to keep watching. Seems like had some big repairs on the generators for the police department. I think there was, you know, so there's some definite. There's 2 of them that are within that 7,000 encumbrance. So that's a, you know, that's a big hit there. But overall budget is doing okay. So you know, keep trying to manage that. The things that we do see some HVAC concerns, and you know, we try to put some money away in capital on that. But in this building here, there's quite a few units that are failing or on the verge of failing, and there's a few the normal space units that are in the town hall. There is no right now. The one that we had ordered came in and was installed. There is no backup. Generally, we do have backups. So we're, you know, the public works director is monitoring that, and probably will try to put another purchase order in before the end of the year just to get one of the units that's older replaced, and that becomes the spare. The new unit goes in stock and gets functional while the manufacturer warranty is still in place. Okay, any questions? All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Tom.
Congratulations on another solid audit.
Tom lives for the audits. Lives for those. All right, so moving on, item 11 this evening is our tax suspense list. This is an annual event. I'll just read the letter from our Collector of Revenue, Cindy Gata, addressed to Tom Robinson, dated April 1st, 2024. Subject proposed suspense fiscal year 2023 to 2024. Each fiscal year, delinquent accounts are to be transferred to the municipal suspense tax book per section 12-165 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The attached list represents those accounts of which delinquent notices have been either returned from the post office as undeliverable or the taxpayer is deceased. The State of Connecticut Motor Vehicle Department was notified immediately upon becoming delinquent, resulting in the denial of any registration until the taxes are paid in full in the delinquent taxpayer's name, including those accounts put on suspense. The total breakdown is as follows. There is $998.74 from the 2011 grand list personal property, $854.89 from the 2012 grand list motor vehicle, $251.34 from 2012 grand list motor vehicle supplemental, $1,320.17 from 2012 grand list personal property, $2,639.74 from the 2013 grand list motor vehicle, $1,875.84 from 2013 grand list motor vehicle supplemental, $1,910.50 from 2013 grand list personal property, $7,877.45 from the 2014 grand list motor vehicle, $1,668.89 from the 2014 grand list motor vehicle supplemental, $3,332.98 from the 2014 grand list personal property, $5,956.44 from the 2015 grand list motor vehicle, $795.62 from the 2015 grand list motor vehicle supplemental, and $1,500.02 from the 2015 grand list personal property, for a grand total requested for approval of $30,982.62. Sincerely yours, Cindy Gata, Collector of Revenue. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Okay, any discussion on this?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to item 12. This is just a note. So we did talk about the tennis courts that are currently being redone at the high school. I don't want to steal your thunder, John, on Board of Ed updates, but one of the things that this board, I know I've received a number of requests from residents in town asking if the town could look into getting pickleball courts. This is probably one of the most popular requests that we get. And pickleball, I'm told, is the fastest growing sport in the country. So we have a number of residents that would like to play. And so we talked about painting lines, and I'd like to thank the Board of Education for agreeing to working with us, because, you know, we don't really have another location right now where we could even feasibly do this. And so Bob Shea presented an alternative to paint lines. He did get a quote on that. I think it was about $900 a tennis court to actually paint the lines, and that was off state contract. But rather than spend the money to do that, Bob thinks he can get it done for less than $100 in tape, and we're gonna give it a shot, I think, and set up a trial. So the back two tennis courts at the high school, Bob has offered to, I think he's gonna work with one of our grounds crew members to get those lines up. So I think it would be worth a trial. You know, I have read some concerns about noise with the paddles and the pickleball. So I think before we paint things and spend money, let's see how this goes first, and then if it becomes popular and residents are out there enjoying it, then maybe we look to paint lines at a later date. But I thought this was a good way to, you know, be cost effective and, you know, test out a solution. And also, I guess the difference in height between a pickleball net and a tennis net is about 2 inches, I'm told. And so Bob thinks that we can probably use the existing tennis nets, maybe even just lower them 2 inches. And so we're gonna give that a shot. So yeah, again, I want to thank the Board of Education for that, and I'll let you guys know, and I'll make an announcement once that is ready for, you know, for public use. So that's really all I had. Does anybody have any questions on that? No. All right, so we'll move on to item 13 on the agenda, which is the 2024 Neighborhood Assistance Act NAA Partnership Program. There is a resolution, it's the purple one in your packets. You may recall we had a public hearing at the start of 6:50 this evening on this. And so this is a yearly program that the town participates in, so that nonprofits in town that wish to participate may do so. So we're just kind of a conduit to allow the participation. So if someone would like to move the resolution?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Good? Good.
All right, I make a motion that we adopt the resolution dated April 3rd, 2024, titled 2024 Neighborhood Assistance Act, NAA, Program Participation. Whereas the State of Connecticut Department of Revenue Services is providing the town of Portland the opportunity to participate in the 2024 Neighborhood Assistance Act, thus allowing interested nonprofit organizations within the municipality to submit applications, and whereas in accordance with the State of Connecticut Department of Revenue Services, the Board of Selectmen shall hold a public hearing on all programs, and the governing body of the municipality must vote to approve these programs. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Town of Portland Board of Selectmen does hereby designate the First Selectman, Ryan J. Curley, as liaison to handle all Neighborhood Assistance Act matters.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Thank you. Any further discussion on this?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Next up is item 14, appointments to boards and commissions. Anybody have appointments?
I have none.
All right, so we'll move on to item 15, which is refunds of excess payments. I believe there's one.
I'll make a motion for the refund of excess payment for James P. Maloney, $576.98.
I'll second it. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Next up is item 16, which is our status report. I have a couple items this evening. I already mentioned Joe's Pond, which was the big one I wanted to convey to you all. I have some good news, some celebration. I met with the high school, I met with Kate Lawson and Bob Shea last week, and there's a ribbon cutting coming up on our new track at Portland High School. And so you are all invited, as well as the public as well. The date of that is Tuesday, April 23rd at 3:30 p.m. And I believe that's the high school track team's first home meet of the season. So looking forward to celebrating with them. I'm sure there's a lot of seniors that are looking forward to having a first home meet up there in quite some time. So I think that's good news. So that's April 23rd. It's a Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. I've reached out to Senator Needleman and Representative Carpino's office, because obviously you may recall they helped secure a good portion of the funding for that. Unfortunately, they are in session that day, and we checked the dates. It just didn't line up. So we're going to do something special for them, I think, on maybe a Saturday perhaps, when they're able to join us. So I'll let you guys know when that is as well, but definitely wanted to reach out to them and thank them as well. I think I mentioned it last time, but we're getting closer to April 22nd, which is the start of brush pickup. So I have to publicize that, and so get your brush to the curb. We do that now on even years. It used to be odd years, but we have since switched. So brush pickup, and Bobby, I believe the transfer station will accept brush during that time period?
For 2 weeks
For 2
from that
weeks.
date.
Thank you. Thank you for thinking of that, too.
Yeah.
Just a couple items. I know the fire department has a pancake breakfast this Sunday, so I hope to see you there. I want to congratulate Savvy Swap. They'll be celebrating 10 years in business on Saturday at 10 a.m. So congratulations to them as well. And then our Economic Development Commission recently awarded Goddess Farm as the business of the quarter. So Jackie and her family came down to the last EDC meeting, and I have a picture again. I've been a little slacking on the social media, so I apologize. We've been a little busy with other things lately, but we'll get that out there as well. So certainly want to congratulate Goddess as well. And that is it for me. Who else has got updates?
Library Board of Directors met a couple weeks ago, and a couple things. They're finalized their room agreement to let people use the rooms in the building, and they're also hosting a table at the Quarry Day celebration. And I know I had other stuff, but I have the wrong notebook.
All right, thank you, Sean. You had your audit report, so that's...
Yeah, I had that.
Any updates?
Yeah, I've got Board of Ed.
Sure.
And I want to, once again, I took my notes last night in my little scribble book, but hats off to Tricia Dean, who always puts these out immediately, so I have the minutes to read from, so I can read them. Just the highlights. The student representatives, by the way, that sit on those board meetings are great young folks. They reported last night that Matilda play concluded. The show was highly successful. They raised over $8,000 on that play. April 10th, the music department travels to Disney. The high school kids took their SAT and PSATs on March 27th, and they're having a pep rally on Friday. Some of us remember those pep rallies quite well. They also, which I thought was really cool, the two student representatives were approached by the Student Senate to bring a proposal to the Board of Education, which is exactly the process they're supposed to follow. And they had a proposal that they would like to move the last day of school from a Monday to a Friday and make that following Monday a Teacher's Service Day. So the Board of Education is considered putting on the agenda, but I thought it was really great that Student Senate brought it up and followed the process. As you mentioned earlier, it was announced that Bob Shea was able to secure a company that, a highly reputable company in the area that had a cancellation, was able to do a crack filling on the high school courts to get another potentially 3 to 5 years out of it. And Brian, I don't want to steal your thunder, but Dr. Britton mentioned that the Friar is preparing a facilities modernization plan, cost estimate with some other information. And there was mention last night that they want to share this at a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education at our April 17th meeting. And they talked about starting that meeting at 6:30 and doing this from the update from 6:30 to 7. Putting on my other hat, my Board of Selectmen hat, I think based upon what I believe to be a fairly sizable amount of information, it seems unrealistic to present it in 30 minutes. So, I could propose that maybe we keep the agenda for that evening lighter than a little bit normal, because there's going to be a lot to talk about with this presentation. And then there were just a bunch of items that were approved and moved forward. The Gildersleeve grants, there were 4 items proposed to submit grant applications to leverage the Gildersleeve grants. The first one was a track and field program enhancement. It's been quite some time since the track has been in use, and apparently a lot of the equipment needs to be repaired or replaced. So they're looking at leveraging some of the Gildersleeve grant money to fill that need. There's also discussion about establishing an artificial intelligence committee. Dr. Britton explained that AI, it's a wave of the future, and in some ways it's kind of scary. but they want to best understand how to leverage it and how to work with it and how to, work with the kids and train for it. So they're asking for seed money to use for training, for supplies, and for software for this newly formed committee. The third item is a Gildersleeve teacher mini grant. Talk about establishing a standardized assessment library for a teacher at Gildersleeve School related to writing and math, I believe. I hope I got that right. And they feel they'll see how that works out, and if it does, then they could disseminate it potentially to all teachers. And there is, as many of you know, they do the announcements on the PA system at the high school. And the middle school, as I understand last night, uses the high school's equipment. They're looking for a grant to establish a television studio lab enrichment, a lab with the enrichment grant from Gildersleeve, so that kids at the middle school level will be able to do something similarly and learn how to use all that equipment. So some good stuff that came out of that, I think. That'll do it.
Do you actually want to talk about, believe Dr. Britton was going to reach out to town of Brookfield?
Oh, yeah, that I didn't see that in here. There is, I think he wanted to have that for the meeting on the 17th, too. He wanted to reach out to a town where the apartments have been similarly built. Was that the one where he wanted to understand that the impact of those apartments in terms of children on the school system? And he's going to reach out to his fellow individuals, superintendent in town, and try to get information on that, which I thought would be helpful. And he hoped to be able to have that for the 17th.
He actually has it. He sent me a memo today on it.
Good.
So I just, it's topical. That's why it's been on my mind. So I want to thank.
And that's one of the reasons I think there's going to be a lot of information presented on the 17th.
Thank you, John. So just to circle back to that special joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Education, is everyone comfortable with April 17th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Buck Foreman?
Sure, we gotta be here.
So I see our Board of Ed Chair is with us. Thank you for being here this evening. So we will see you in 2 weeks. And yeah, I think you're right though, John. Chances are, it might go a little over, which is no problem. We'll just go into the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting whenever that concludes. But, we'll try to keep the town and the board agenda light for that meeting. I think that's a good idea. So thank you. Jim?
Parks and Rec and Water and Sewer are next Monday, so I'll have something for them.
Save it for the 17th.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other status updates?
The only one I have is for planning and zoning. Their meeting is tomorrow, 7 p.m., the high school auditorium. It's going to be a busy meeting. They have 5 public hearings, and 2 of them include Brainerd.
First I'm hearing about it.
No.
When was that?
Anybody else?
No.
All right, so with that, we'll move on to public comment. Come on up.
Come on.
Shocker.
More notes, Ben?
Yeah, more notes.
First, for clarification, when I brought up taking away the buildings from the Board of Ed, I was on both sides. That was not a dig at either party. That was just, so we can start making the repairs we need and budgeting for it, and then it can't get used somewhere else that's probably needed at the time. So now I'll go back over to, that was a good presentation by the attorney, Matt. Got a whole bunch of comments here. So, number one, the Hart Jarvis house that he's now, Dan is now agreeing to take on as a project, was originally, he had to put property in the back of the site and move it, pay to move it, and then not get the rent out of it. He had a positive now by keeping it where it is, not paying to move it, and he gets the rent forever, okay? So let's be careful on what we call trade-offs. Ryan, you mentioned $3 million in potential revenue. I would love for you to commission Tom Robinson to come up with an expenditure side of that equation. in the future. And I'll give you an example, because Tom crushes numbers and does a great job. If the new apartments, the 108 apartments, generated 30 children, it would cost us $3,150,000 in that same time frame, using an equation of $15,000 per student per year. So it's not revenue, and that's not net profit or net revenue. I want to be clear, there could be way more expenses. And I love the fact that you guys brought up children in the school system and compare. So the best comparison is just call the apartment owners in Portland. Find out Portland, because we're a bedroom town, we're a great town. People love our school system. Call the largest apartment guy in town. I'm sure we can all figure out who that guy is. Call him up, ask him, how many children per bedroom? Period. I believe it's going to be somewhere in the ratio of 1 child for every 2 bedrooms. It's going to be the number in Portland. It's pretty easy to figure out. Hopefully he's at the zoning meeting tomorrow to tell us Portland's numbers. I don't care about any other town, because this is a great town. People come here for our school system. So that is a pretty easy one. I can't believe we're still this far down. But the most important thing is people need to fully understand that site with a 3rd residential tower, we lose the ability to ever get a Trader Joe's, any type of supermarket. This site is only just so big. If everybody looks at it from an aerial perspective, approximately half the site now is covered by buildings E and F, a little less than half, I want to be clear. If we do allow a 3rd residential tower, building A, we are going to lose a big ability here. I understand we want to finish the project as a community, and I respect that. And I'm not bashing you guys for where you're at. I get it. I was there. I don't want your job right now. But the reality is, if we get this wrong by placing that many more apartments when we don't know the true effect from the 240, and let's be real, the reality is we are not going to get the mixed use we wanted to get. That's fair. Anybody can agree with that. If you're lowering it from 111 down to 83, and you're increasing the apartments from 240 to 350, we're not getting the ratio we thought we were going to get as a community. And that was the ratio. So, and I get what you're doing, but I would much rather see that A not touched. It could be a future hotel. It could be a future Trader Joe's. It could be a whole thing, and that's the real revenue. The real revenue is when you don't have kids in the school system, no matter what. Nobody can argue that there's going to be revenue out of a supermarket forever, and there would be very little cost. So I think that's a fair assessment. Or whatever he gets, a hotel or whatever he gets. The other thing I want to bring up, keep in mind he's applying, or he is going to be applying for a reduction down to 83,000 square feet of commercial. And out of that 83,000, approximately 15,000 of that is going to be the historic homes. Think about that. So you're not even gonna net 70,000, barely a super Stop and Shop, to put it in perspective. All this trade-off, we get a couple commercial homes or historic homes restored, but the big trade-off is now all we're getting is about 70,000 square feet of taxable commercial space, new, that we didn't have. Don't go the 350 route. The 240 barely justifies that. I got behind the 240 reluctantly, and I believe I even used that word in the meeting when I voted in favor. I had to sit where you guys are, pressure was on me. The majority of Portland at the time wanted 240. Majority of Portland at the time wanted 111,000 square feet of commercial. And your attorney is somewhat accurate when he said the abatement does say up to 111,000 square feet. Matt was spot on with that statement. But it references all the buildings. And the reason it said up to was some of the buildings may change slightly. We can all agree on that. And there is verbiage in there that allows the buildings to. So it would have been something very close. It wouldn't have been a massive reduction or anything like that, because he had to build literally through all the letters of the buildings, and they were spelled out specifically. And I'll just finalize on the point that and I'm not sure I'm driving it home enough. Planning and zoning has no more teeth to get 60% of this commercial built on the tail end. We need the commercial. You guys are in the driver's seat to get us everything. And I respect, Mr. Hetrick just brought up the second floor never becoming residential. I get all that. Chances are there probably will be another revision to this or another comeback, and I hope not. I want this to be done right. I'm the biggest fan to get this thing completed right. I will say it on the record. I'll be there. I'll advocate for Dan to get an appropriate tax abatement when it's time, but be careful at this point. We need to fully comprehend what we're getting as a town on the zoning end and see what happens. And even if zoning said, and I don't believe they will, 350 sounds great for apartments, you guys still have the ability to say, absolutely not. You get no abatement if you go that route. That's the difference between these two bodies. You guys are in charge of our money and how this town is going to be looked at in 20 years. Remember 20 years from now, when we need a supermarket, or even 5 years, I hope, or anything to that effect, or a hotel, where's it going to go? Why would we put 108 more apartments on our best commercial site? You want apartments? I can spread the word. You tell me how many you want, and I'll get the application in within 3 months. That's easy. You put it in a residential area with city water, city sewer. You can have as many apartments as you want, if that's the goal as a community. First of all, I don't believe that's the goal as a community right now. Be very careful. This needs to be well balanced. We don't know what we're going to get. Let's get it right. Let's see what comes out of the 240 before we go any further. And I think you guys really have to, and then, I know it's hard. You're going to have to negotiate with Dan. He's going to put a lot of pressure on you. He might, whatever. You guys got to hold the line. You got to do what's right for this community. And I think at the end of the day, I pray and I'll keep coming back and saying it if I don't think you're listening, but I really appreciate everything, and please try to get this back to 2 phases and get it done right and protect the town.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
And we do appreciate you coming, too. It's good to see you. Honestly, it's nice to get an audience, to be honest. So, any other public comment in the audience? Any public comment online? I just saw a message about an audio problem.
It's probably the rain.
Oh, okay.
At least either on one end or the other. It might be on its end.
Okay. I'm told that if there is audio problem online, it may be due to the weather. It may be weather related. So, sorry about that. We'll go another time for public comment. Any online or in person? All right, so we'll move on to item 18, Board of Selectmen General Informal Discussion. Does anyone have anything this evening?
I just have one thing. We've talked about it in the past, and we've talked about pushing it off until after budget season was done, about turning the antique Mack fire truck over to the members of the department.
Yep.
So if we could put that on our next agenda to discuss and set up.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't forgotten about it. I think we're all in favor of doing that. It's just, I reached out to our town attorney. I believe when there was a previous antique truck that the town turned over, I want to say in 2002. At the time, they just made a simple motion to do that, but I think it would be better to draft a real resolution on that. And so that's what I've been corresponding back and forth with Carrie Olson on that to do it properly. And it's just, you know, as you see by the meeting, we've had a lot of other things that have kind of taken precedence. So I will get back to that. I have not forgotten, and we'll get it done. And thank you for the reminder.
I'm good.
Yeah, I just had one thing, and it came out of the last commentary. I don't want to have any confusion. The $15,000 per student is what the average cost, and I'm not sure what the exact number is as it varies. What is that? Yeah, no, that's actually not too far off.
Yes? You said it with such conviction, Ben.
She said it's slightly higher.
Yeah, it's right.
Last time we were told it was 19,000.
Yeah, it's right somewhere, it's in that ballpark. I haven't looked at the specific of it, but that's the number, right now, if you take the total cost to operate our schools divided by the number of students. That includes all the fixed costs, et cetera. Adding students in this complex would not add cost at the rate of $15,000 per student. It would be whatever the incremental cost is for that student to come in, whether it would be, you know, books, equipment, whatever that they would need. And then obviously if you've got a certain number of students and you hit a trigger on class size. But I want to make sure there's not confusion between the average number of cost per student, which includes fixed assets that do not necessarily change with adding 5 or 10 or whatever the number is that is in the memo, versus the incremental cost of adding those students. It's a very, very different number. If you use the number of students times the average fixed cost, it's a scary number. And we want to make sure there's no confusion over that.
Yeah, thank you for the
Okay.
clarification, Jim. And yeah, as I mentioned, I do have a memo on that, and I think we'll talk more at the April 17th joint meeting on projections and all that. There's I see Laurel nodding her head. There's a lot more information to come on that, so we'll get there. Any other general informal discussion items? So I have nothing for follow-up items this evening, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that.
Again,
I didn't want to jump in front of you.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Good night.